Assalamu alaikum. Thank you to the organisers for inviting us to speak on here today, and all to you here, those who are online and those in the future watching the recording. Today I'm presenting on behalf of my team and partners, Caps Unlock, a report that we published earlier this year, looking at the internet landscape of Kazakhstan as a kind of a gateway report on the general resilience of the internet for Central Asia. There's a lot of challenges that come out of the report, but there's also a lot of opportunities. And that's why we want to, whenever we're measuring something, we want to be able to establish the baseline and understand where we can go in the future. So let's begin. Kazakhstan obviously has a rich history of serving the general region, telecommunications and logistics. And this whole idea of it wanting to become that digital hub, it really, it harks back to its original days as well as being just that logistical hub. And that obviously has a lot to do with its geography, to its original partners in Russia, or its continual partners. And that's where the internet's obviously originated from as well. Because it's had that long history with Russia, it has the most robust internet infrastructure in the region, and most robust internet penetration as well, which has formed the foundation for it to improve its performance and use. This is most apparent with the big uptick in those streaming and over-the-top services like TikTok and YouTube. The growth of these global content platforms and how the contents they are carrying juxtaposes against the traditional content regulation policies and norms of the country. And its upstream connectivity raises policy questions about sovereignty, resilience, and risk management. As many of you know, this has raised several policy debates in the region. While some claim that Kazakhstan has independent access to the internet, others are worried about overdependence on Russia, which started from its Kaznet roots in the 90s. It's interesting to note that Kazakhstan and Central Asia's early reliance on Russian routes mirrors many of the African nations' dependence on France for connectivity in the 90s. This can explain, in some situations in Africa, a lag in market competition and resilience compared to other African countries that diversified early, such as South Africa, which built east-west subsea cables, achieving greater resilience. Obviously, having a sea is very important in that situation, and being a landlocked region, there's a lot of chalk and cheese associated in that respect. But we can see through new interconnectivity projects that were presented in the previous session, connecting to China and, of course, across to Azerbaijan, that Central Asia is seeking ways to diversify its connectivity internally and with the rest of the world. One area that needs particular attention is the need for more diversified local ISP markets, considering that Kazakh Telecom dominates with over 70% share. Although reforms have tried to stimulate competition, Kazakh Telecom remains a monopoly, or how did we, single server, or anyway, I can't quite remember the what one of our guests before said of their monopoly, which influences market dynamics and resilience. It's important to note that this is a shared reality of nearly 80% of countries of the world. So, I mean, this profile isn't new for a lot of people. So you're in the same boat. And a lot of people, put up the white flag and say, look, we've been trying to fight this fight for so many years. It's a hard fight to fight, and there's never going to be change. But from our research, and we recently posted about this, that change can happen quite quickly. In the last 2 years, we've seen quite dramatic change in about 25 countries globally, particularly in Iraq and Venezuela, which have totally diversified their markets in a very, very short time. So it can happen, and there are examples that you can look for wanting to do it. Greater market diversity is also required for the upstream connectivity, and it was good to see that coming through in the projects in the previous session. Half of the global internet access from Kazakhstan is flowing through Kazakh Telecom or its customers. This centralization reduces resilience as most networks depend on a few transit providers. The lack of diversity in BGP paths leaves the ecosystem vulnerable to when Kazakh Telecom experiences an outage. I said when, not if, because we all know outages happen. In Europe, the EU competition law broke up telecom monopolies by mandating wholesale access and interconnection. In contrast, Ethiopia's monopoly under Ethio Telecom delayed digital growth for decades, and its resilience profile is reflective of this lack of competition and resulting innovation and development. Kazakhstan ultimately needs to decide which path it wants to follow, not just for itself, but for its neighbouring countries too. Given that it provides connectivity for them, particularly Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, at higher transit costs than they received from Russia, something that many of you are aware of, and the tensions it has caused between ISPs. If Kazakhstan sees itself as a regional digital hub, it has a responsibility to engage affordable connectivity or enable affordable connectivity in Central Asia. Otherwise, it risks alienating its neighbours further. And if no one wants to connect, then what's the point of being a hub? Regional policymakers need to collaborate to identify ways to achieve this. And I think just from, again, seeing some presentations and people in this room, there is that opportunity to collaborate. This also needs to be looking at investing in alternative links. Sorry, I won't put one for alternative links to China, Azerbaijan, or direct global connections, which is currently happening. And the Trans-Caspian fiber optic project and the new east-west routes are positive steps forward in Kazakhstan and for the region. On the topic of infrastructure, we've touched on how Kazakhstan's fiber connectivity is heavily oriented northward with 17 links to Russia, but far fewer to China or other neighbours. Around 80 to 90% of traffic flows via Russian ISPs. This creates a resilience risk as disruptions, both natural and intentional, in Russia directly after Kazakhstan and other countries in the region. If we look across the Caspian Sea, we can see how Georgia and Azerbaijan have diversified by investing in Caspian and Black Sea cables, becoming east-west corridors, which Kazakhstan is hoping to join. Bayer showed a map of this map earlier, and it highlights basically what infrastructure, the national mile infrastructure is there. And competition can often stimulate greater innovation and development. And from our you can see that it's quite diversified, not diversified, it's quite vast in terms of where cables are being laid in Kazakhstan, particularly if he had a better map showing how much more cabling there is south of there. From my questions earlier, the Internet Society have interest in this opportunity to increase redundancy of cabling in Kazakhstan and in Central Asia. And by mapping and auditing what's in the ground and what's above the ground, because it's currently quite lacking, particularly that data that's made public. A few slides ago, I showed the picture of the Kazakhstan railway infrastructure with the note of how the Kaznek infrastructure initially followed it. Based on my desktop research, which I didn't have those maps that were shown earlier today, that's the most public map and detailed map of fibre infrastructure in the country, that along with this. So it's not really providing us all that much detail in terms of who is being connected and also what's the capacity of those lines and where's the redundancy associated with it. This is a shared limitation by many countries again, and something that the Open Fibre Data Standard is working to strengthen by describing national middle mile and in the future last mile networks. The importance of such standardized data cannot be underestimated when you consider the costs associated with overdevelopment and cable cuts caused by not knowing where cable is laid, who owns it, who it serves, and what technology it is using. If you'd like to learn more about this project and how to get involved, we're hoping to have a workshop in the region next year to discuss this in more detail and actually how to incorporate your data into this. Come talk to me over the next day. As this forum knows particularly well, connectivity within the country is equally important to the rest of the internet. Despite having 3 IXPs, only 6% of Kazakhstan's networks here locally, most of which are with neutral KazNICs, followed by the state-owned Kazakhstan Internet Exchange. From our experience, neutrality in IXPs is key. Regulators should promote carrier neutral data centers and peering points to keep traffic local and resilient. In terms of content, over 60% of the country's top 1,000 websites are hosted locally, which is great. But hosting is dominated by Cloudflare and Kazakh Telecom. Kazakhstan's high consumption of Russian digital services also raises questions of digital sovereignty and data protection. Again, policymakers face a choice: align regulatory framework more with Russia or push for greater autonomy and alignment with global internet norms. Again, users might be the ones who actually start making that choice. Another alternative connectivity option that many landlocked countries are considering is LEO satellites, like Starlink and OneWeb. Currently, they are being trialled but face regulatory hurdles, with citizens not able to legally own Starlink terminals. Correct me if I'm wrong if that's changed. Kazakhstan's restrictions on LEO terminals echoes India's cautious stance on Starlink. In contrast, Brazil embraced LEO for Amazonian connectivity, so rural connectivity, and that's really helped with their digital inclusion. While satellites help rural areas, fibre remains the preferred option for speed and reliability, and that will always be the case. One other facet that the report looked at was people's trust in the internet. Encryption has become a critical feature of the global internet, yet Kazakhstan has twice pushed for residents to install government-issued root certificates. These could enable surveillance and interception of encrypted traffic. Even after the program's end, certificates may remain on devices, creating a long-term security risk. The government's push for root certificate installation is a direct policy choice that undermines trust in digital services. From a telecom policy angle, this also affects e-commerce, fintech, and foreign investment. Security policy must balance state surveillance with the need for strong encryption to protect citizens and the economy. Another aspect of trust is the availability of internet. Kazakhstan has experienced internet shutdowns, including the week-long one in 2022. All traffic in Kazakhstan is routed through a centralized unified gateway, which enables surveillance and shutdowns, but also creates a single point of failure. Such shutdowns harm economies, societies, and the global internet. They also destabilize regional and global trust in Kazakhstan as a digital hub. Telecom policy must move towards legal safeguards against arbitrary shutdowns, ensuring proportionality and accountability. So, as I said at the start, I said there was going to be challenges, but each challenge here is an opportunity. That's how I see it. And to this end, the report recommends that Kazakhstan invest in critical infrastructure such as fiber, IXPs, and data centers, including ways to make these more economically sustainable. Improve market competition by supporting smaller ISPs, neutral data centers, and CDNs, and build trust among its users and its neighbours by abandoning surveillance-based controls and embracing encryption. Ultimately, its digital hub future depends on resilience and reform. Before I finish, this research was made possible through the generous support of CAPS Unlock, whose funding enabled this study. The Internet Society extends its gratitude to staff members and external experts for their thoughtful reviews and contributions. Cassini also provided the geopolitical analysis and cartographic production of this report. Finally, if you're interested in keeping abreast of this report and other reports that we're looking to do in 2026, please subscribe to the Pulse newsletter. If you're wanting to partner with us, we offer plenty of research opportunities with regards to measurement. And you can obviously view the report there through that QR code. It's available in Kazakh, Russian, and English. Or if you like the hard copy, we do have plenty of copies at our desk at the end of the hallway. Finally, come to our social after this session and see what the Internet Society is about, the community behind the internet. Thanks.